In this lesson, we will create a system that will prevent the tail from exceeding its length. We'll use a spline IK to have that happen. So we've seen the difference between creating the rig manually, and we're left with a stretchy spine. Then we've used the spline IK on the neck in order to get the functionality we want. So we're kind of using a combination of the two for our tail rig. And that way we learn a technique for, again, locking that length so it doesn't stretch too far. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and use our bone tools. So we're going to just snap to each point. I'll go ahead and enable pivot snap. We can also turn off vertex snap. Alright, so again, we're just snapping to each helper. We'll just work our way down. And once we've managed to do this, we'll then go in and enable fins, just so it's easier to select between our bone objects, because in the next lesson we're going to go ahead and work on the bones that we'll actually skin to. So just to make these easier to select, again, we'll just add fins to one of these, and then we can go ahead and copy that across. Let's go ahead and turn off snap. So I'll go ahead and enable front and back fins, and we can start to adjust their size. Once we find something we like, we can go ahead and copy and paste down the rest of the chain. Okay, so with all of these selected, including our end nub, let's go ahead and paste. And we could also increase the size of these. So I'll go ahead and show you a quick way to do that using MaxScript. Let's go ahead and open up our listener window. Just go ahead and right click. We can go ahead and clear everything out. So with all of these still selected, we'll type in as follows. That's the $, dot size, or excuse me, in this case, being that we're working with bones, it's going to be width and height. So we'll start with the width, and we'll have that equal to 5. When we hit enter, you can see that the width has changed. Let's go ahead and do that for the height. So I'll just go ahead and type over the width. We'll set the height to 5, and now we're left with a larger bone object. So again, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to select between our bone systems this way. Okay, beautiful. So the next step is to position constrain each of these helpers now to each of our drive bones. So that means that we no longer need the path constraint tied to them. Alright, so let's go in and we will freeze transforms on all of these helpers to clean them up, and then we'll go ahead and apply our position constraint. Okay, great. So now it's just a matter of going through and locking each of these down. So we'll start with the first one at the top, choose the position constraint, and select the drive bone it should be connected to. So it's really straightforward. I'll go ahead and leave the others up to you, and we'll move forward from there. Okay, so all of our PT helpers should have been position constrained. So the next step is to apply our spline IK. And this is to drive the entire tail, and then we'll take all of those spline IK controls and tie them to animation controls shortly. Alright, so let's go ahead and get to work. We will grab our root bone, alt right click. So if I have added the spline IK tool, nope, that's one I haven't added to the list, no worries. I'll just go ahead and head over to IK solvers, spline IK. We'll grab our end nub, and now we'll just need to select our spline. Great. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We can go in and grab each of our controls. Beautiful. This looks really nice. Now the reason why we aren't going to just stick with the spline IK is simply because it has a few flipping issues at times. At times it works very well, but in our tails case, we may notice a bit of flipping when we start to work on the tails orientation. So instead, we're just going to add a new bone system to prevent that. All right, beautiful. So things are looking very nice. And at this point, I'd like to just go in and rename all of these control helpers that the spline IK generates, and then we can go ahead and store them in objects to hide. So we could always take care of storing these objects in their layers first. I'll start with the spline as well as all of the helper objects. And then we'll also want to add our drive chain to that same layer. So I'll go ahead and grab the root object, and then we can use control page down to grab the entire hierarchy and add. Okay, beautiful. So next, we just want to go in and rename these objects. So for our bone system, we can use something along the lines of BDRV, since it will not be envelope 2, tail A01. When we get to the very end, this nub object, this will be BE DRV, tail K01. And then as far as these helper objects that drive the spline, we can use a naming convention of PT SPL underscore tail. In this case, it would be E01. So again, we're just naming these alphabetically. And then if you'd like, you can always adjust the size of these objects. So we can go in and maybe shrink their size just a little bit more. So selecting all 5, we can go ahead and set their size to, let's say, about 15 or so. So I'll go ahead and open up the listener window, and that's going to be $size is equal to 15, just to shrink them a little bit more. So that's the last task for this lesson. Again, just go through and make sure all of these objects have been renamed. And in the next lesson, we're ready to create our bone objects we'll envelope to.